and the newest member of our communications and marketing team. She serves as our new Director of News and Media Relations. And I just found out something I didn't know about her. She was the very first female drum major for the university. Please welcome Jolene Butts Freeman. Jolene.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Burston. I appreciate that. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Clark Atlanta University Faculty and Staff Town Hall. Thank you for joining us for this evening's conversation with our special guest, none other than Dr. George T. French Jr., the president of Clark Atlanta University. Now, before we start, we would like to, of course, always start everything proper. We'll start with prayer. We'd like to ask our chaplain, Reverend Dr. Tanya Miles, to open up our town hall with a word of prayer.
Thank you, Mrs. Freeman. Brothers and sisters, I greet you this evening with both the joy of the Lord and the heaviness of these times in my heart. For us at CAU, we are concerned about loved ones. Work and home life have blurred. The workday seems longer, the needs seem greater. Classes in tomorrow, but the work is far from over. Many of us are tired, and all of us are wondering what is next. We get it, but we must not lose hope. We must trust that all is well. You see, we are here together at this time for a reason. We are living into a history that will be told forever. We are here at CAU in this part of God's vineyard, and we are built for this because we are CAU strong. We're a people of resilience, a people of grit, and a people of hope. The brain trust and the black backbone, heads, hands, and hearts. This evening, as we prepare for this town hall meeting, I invite you to join me in a word of prayer for the one who promises that all will be well. Won't you pray with me? Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks for this day. We give you thanks for your presence, and we give you thanks for your faithfulness. For this place called CAU, we give you thanks, and we ask that you would have your way, Lord, have your way. May your spirit rest upon our president, your son, Dr. George T. French. Strengthen him and guide him as he discerns the way forward. For this executive cabinet, faculty, and staff, guide our hearts and our minds that our decisions would honor you. For our alum and students, family, and friends, for this world, we pray for comfort. We pray for peace, and we pray for the will to endure. Lord, remind us always that all is well and show us the way. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh upon this place. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on this place and have your way, Lord. Have your way. It is in your holy, righteous, and matchless name that we pray. Amen and amen.
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 Thank you, Reverend Dr. Miles, for that powerful prayer. Always, I am always moved by your prayers, and I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for that today.
To God be the glory.
Yes, ma'am. Clark Atlanta faculty and staff, President French has invited a distinct group of CAU leaders to join him as panelists this evening for our town hall. And at this time, I'd like to introduce them to you. First, we have Dr. Dorcas Bowles, Provost and Chief Academic Officer. Then Mr. Eli Phillips, the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. Dr. Kurt B. Young, Chair of Political Science Department and the Chair of CAU Faculty Assembly. Next, Mr. Ron Brown, Chair of CAU Staff Assembly. Mrs. Deborah Hoyt, Chief People Officer. Shelton Anderson, Associate Vice President for Facilities and Project Management Planning. And last, Dr. Omar Torres, Dean of Student Services and Campus Life. Thank you all for joining us today. Now, for our listeners and viewers who have joined this town hall via Zoom, please note that the format for this evening's call is a 1-hour recorded discussion with our president and our panelists. Now, due to the large numbers of viewers who have submitted questions, we'll do our very best to make sure that we answer them all in the time allotted. If we do not answer all the questions, please rest assured that we will send frequently asked questions and answers in a summary to your attention. Now, I want to give one quick housekeeping note. I'd like you to know, faculty and staff, that if those that were unable to attend tonight's town hall, the Office of University Relations and Communications will post an electronic copy of our discussion this evening on the university's website. Now, at this time, I'd like to welcome to the call a leader who believes that CAU faculty and staff are truly among the best in the country. Now, I can also attest to that because I'm a Clark alum, and if it were not for Clark Atlanta University, I would not have my degree. I have to tell you that. President French wanted to make sure that your concerns were also heard. So let me take the liberty to give you one fun fact about President French. While he is new to the presidency of Clark Atlanta University, he is not new to the role of president. He served as the president of Miles College for 14 years in Birmingham, Alabama. And I remind everybody that I've got family in Birmingham. I love Birmingham. And he also served, get this, as the longest president in the state of Alabama. So with that, welcome, President French.
Thank you so much, Jolene, and welcome back home to Clark Atlanta University. I must say parenthetically that we are glad to have you back. You've made an impact already in the month that you've been with us. So I'm appreciative for Sam Burston for seeking you out and bringing you back home to Clark Atlanta University. Also, I want to thank this distinguished group of panelists. These panelists are not just panelists, but these are leaders at Clark Atlanta University. They form the corpus of my leadership team. Of course, there are others who are not on the call, but I'm appreciative for these panelists who have taken time to address faculty and staff with me this evening. And most importantly, I want to thank and welcome my faculty and staff of Clark Atlanta University. I miss you. I miss walking on the promenade. I miss popping up in your offices and seeing those surprised faces when I'm there. But I'm looking forward to reconvening on campus. For indeed, we did what we had to do. We had some tough decisions and choices to make as we dealt with this worldwide pandemic, realizing that the 5,000 colleges and universities in the United States alone had to transition from on-ground to virtual university and college status, and not only in the United States, but around the world. So we are dealing now with a new normal, but I'm proud of my faculty. I'm proud of faculty members, some of whom had never taught remotely, but they went to CERTL and they received remote and online instruction. And they were flexible and they were fluid. And I'm proud of the staff who support the faculty members in all that they do every day. And then, of course, I'm proud of my students. It was an adjustment for so many of them, but they are making that adjustment. And we are making this work at Clark Atlanta University. At Clark Atlanta University, we have proven that mantra. We'll either find a way or we will make one. And we are making one right now, Jolie. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, President French. At this time, we're going to have our panelists to give their opening remarks. We'll start with Dr. Bowles, our Provost and Chief Academic Officer, followed by Mr. Eli Phillips, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, Dr. Kurt B. Young, Chair of Faculty Assembly, Mr. Ron Brown, Chair of Staff Assembly, Mrs. Deborah Hoyt, Chief People Officer, Mr. Shelton Anderson, Associate Vice President for Facilities and Project Management, and last but not least, Dr. Omar Torres, Dean of Student Services and Campus Life, in that order. Provost Bowles.
Good evening, faculty and staff. I am pleased to be able to speak with you this evening. In times of crisis, members of Clark Atlanta University community band together to help each other through, to be there for each other. And we will use this COVID-19 experience to learn and plan for the future. I want to commend members of the administration, faculty, and staff for the roles you have each played in preparing the university to respond to this pandemic and mitigate the spread of the disease. COVID-19 remains a challenge unlike any other we have faced, and it will be with us for some time until effective therapies and vaccines are available. The majority of our students have moved off campus, and all students and faculty have moved to remote instruction and learning. I want to thank faculty for becoming TTEC certified in a short period of time, and staff for adjusting quickly to telework. I am inspired by the skill and dedication I have seen throughout our CAU family as we have responded to this pandemic. CAU personnel are working to ensure that critical services are being met, including admissions, advisement, registration, financial aid, counseling, and technical support. Dr. Omar Torres, Mr. Sam Burston, and Mr. Charles Cooper have worked tirelessly to send students computers, provide students with needed money and resources, and to answer logistical questions as compassionate resources during these troubling times. President French has continued to remind each of us that we must always keep students, our learner population, at the center of all of our activities. Just as we have demonstrated remarkable leadership in the past, we do so today by exploring new ways to serve our students. Such innovation in the face of uncertainty is what makes Clark Atlanta University resilient and exceptional.
Thank you, Provost Bowles. Next, we'll have Mr. Eli Phillips, our Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. Mr. Phillips.
Professor Provost Bowles, that was a powerful statement. And just as I thanked Jolene for returning to alma mater, I want to thank you for the fantastic job that you've done. You were former interim president at one time of this fine university, as well as, I don't know if you panelists know this, as well as Miss Tuskegee University when you were in college. So congratulations and welcome home.
Yes. Greetings, everyone. On behalf of the faculty at Clark Atlanta University, and particularly on behalf of the Faculty Assembly, I want to say thank you to Provost Bowles and to our dear President, Dr. French. You know, this conversation is taking place at an important time. It's a very timely discussion. This time of year is always a challenging time for our faculty. And we deal with all that comes with the end of the year activity, not to mention now having to deal with a global pandemic. And so we appreciate the recognition that faculty were able to transition to help quell some of the anxieties of our students. But it's also important to recognize that faculty carry some of these anxieties as well. And so it's an important time for us to speak to some of them and hear our leadership articulate some of these concerns that confront our faculty. And you know, Dr. French, this is also a year, as in previous years, that the Faculty Assembly has taken on some major heavy lifting, serious projects, and that work continues. And so it is a great opportunity to have a chance to talk about some of our challenges going forward and the promises going forward as we work through this Corona moment. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Is that Mr. Phillips?
No, it's Ron.
Okay, Mr. Brown. Go right ahead, sir.
Greetings and great evening, Panther Nation. As your representative for the Staff Assembly, I want you to rest assured that we are engaged in prayer and express our heartfelt concern for you and your loved ones to please stay safe. We're looking forward to your return to our one exceptional university. Thank you.
Mrs. Deborah Hoyt, our Chief People Officer, is next, followed by Mr. Shelton Anderson, our Associate Vice President for Facilities and Project Management, followed by Dr. Omar Torres, Dean of Student Services and Campus Life. And if we're able to get Mr. Phillips, we'll have him to follow after Mr. Torres.
Good evening. I'm delighted that we have this opportunity to connect with you. We began teleworking on March 17th, so it's been almost a month since we've had a chance to speak face to face. While we would much rather have the opportunity to connect with you face to face, at least we have this way of addressing your concerns. I just celebrated my 6th anniversary at Clark Atlanta University and now serving under the 4th president in that short time. I'd like to share with you that the focus, the collaboration, the camaraderie among the leadership team is at its very highest in my time with CAU. We have all become aware of how a crisis can draw at the best of human nature. In this case, I would like to also acknowledge the impact of Dr. French's leadership on this team and the positive team dynamics that we are experiencing today. Under his direction, I have witnessed the setting aside of silos and personal agendas and a single-minded commitment and devotion to doing what's best for the university and what's best for her people.
Thank you, Ms. Hoyt.
Thank you, Ms. Hoyt. And good evening, CAU faculty and staff. It is certainly a pleasure to be here with you today, meeting with you virtually. And you know, as the entire world prepares for the mass return to its workforce, the return for students, the return for saying our families, and more specifically for all of us here at CAU, the desire to return back to campus and our normal environments, it really is important that you know we are here for you. We are actively working to ensure that you can do so and do that with confidence, of course, when the time is right and when it is safe. So with that, I definitely would like to thank all of the various leaders that are across the task force, the current panel, and our president for his leadership, and thank all of you, more importantly, for entrusting us to deliver in this unprecedented time.
Good evening. First of all, let me ask, I've been having technical difficulties. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir.
We can hear you now.
Very good, thank you. Let me first begin by saying how nice it has been working at Clark Atlanta University for the past 2 months. Despite my many years of working in higher education at several institutions, the COVID-19 crisis changed all of the plans for how I intended to get started at the university. But the bright spot for me has been that I found out quickly that I work with both a president and an executive cabinet who bring incredible knowledge, skills, and abilities to their jobs, and who also have great compassion and concern for CAU students, faculty, and staff, and the surrounding community. I am reminded each day on my daily prayer calls of the love and goodness of God, and that through our continued faithfulness and trust in Him and His Word, that we will get through this pandemic crisis. I truly look forward to meeting a lot more of the faculty and staff when it is safe to return to work.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Next, we have Dr. Omar Torres, Dean of Student Services and Campus Life. Dr. Torres.
I don't want to be the barrier to our fruitful evening. I do want to use this opportunity, one, to thank both our president, President French, and our provost, Provost Bowles, for their diligent leadership through this particular difficult endeavor. But I also want to take this as an opportunity, while I recognize that my job description specifically focuses on the student experience, I cannot do that job alone without our partners, and particularly the partners here on this town hall, our faculty and staff. My job becomes tremendously easy because of the individuals we have standing or sitting in front of a classroom, managing that particular experience for our students, and being able to share that space with my staff colleagues supporting our students through their particular experience. So I end our introduction this evening by saying thank you. And I look forward to continuing to partner with you as we get our students through this experience.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for those amazing opening remarks. Mr. President, faculty and staff have pre-submitted their questions via email as you've requested. So we will go ahead and move forward with our question and answer segment for the town hall. Okay, our first question will go to President French. The question is, we are all concerned about the implications of this pandemic on the long-term health of CAU. As our president, what can you share about our current financial health and how that may influence decisions about moving ahead with the next academic year?
Thank you, Jolene. And again, realizing that this is pandemic, realizing that this is not a crisis which is restricted to our nation, as domestic policy and domestic implications, but as pandemic, this is a global reality which affects the economies of the United States and all world economies. So it is a challenge, it is a crisis indeed. The good thing about going into this crisis, however, is that Clark Atlanta University is on sound financial footing. We are great, we are healthy as an institution, as noted by the recent upgrade in our credit ratings of Moody's. And I thank the team for that. I thank people like Dr. Lons Thompson, who is the Chief Financial Officer. And if you know Lons, if you go in there asking for a nickel, you might come out with 4 cents because he's going to squeeze it. But it's okay, because that's put us in the position that we find ourselves now. We have a board that is very engaged and very fiscally responsible. So with this entire team, yes, we find some challenges now, but we're healthy. That's why we have a healthy endowment. We have healthy reserves. We have healthy profit and loss and balance sheets going into this crisis. So yes, while we will and we must engage cost containment, while we must engage predictive modeling and look to the future to make sure that we are fiscally responsible, we begin from a position of strength. Now, that being said, we've done the morally right thing by our students. We've developed emergency student aid funds, which you'll hear more about from Sam Burston and Dean Torres, and we've raised money to help our students in the day-to-day getting through this crisis. At the same time, we've been responsible in that we prorated 40% of auxiliary services, which includes housing and dining, back to the students. We prorated 40% of fees back to the students because these were funds that they paid to the university that we could not fulfill the auxiliary requirements, although we are fulfilling the tuition because we continue online learning. So yes, there will be some financial challenges, to be sure. There'll be financial challenges over the summer as we come to the end of the fiscal year. But I'm proud that Sam Burston and his team had already met 72% of their goal for fundraising. So I'm glad that they were good stewards in advance before reaching this crisis. So yes, there will be challenges in the fall as we bring our students back to campus, as our students come back to campus. And our students are coming back to campus, and we are excited to receive them back on the promenade. We have contingency planning in place for the fall, and we're looking forward to welcoming them back. But I want to really allay the fears of the faculty and staff who want to know the bottom line. And it's my job as president to give you all the bottom line. The bottom line is we are fiscally healthy, we are strong and stable. Yes, we must make tough decisions, but we will make those decisions together. And that's why I was glad to see Dr. Kurt Young come on to talk to the faculty and staff today about conversations and negotiations and how we can get through this together. Because when I first arrived on the campus of Clark Atlanta University, I met with the students, I met with the faculty, I met with the staff, and we kept our word on everything that they've asked us to do. And we're going to continue to do that. And I continue to look forward to additional dialogue. You have some more questions for me?
Yes, sir. Actually, the second question is for you, President French, and it's for our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Phillips. So this question reads, while we know that a certain percentage of the CARES Act must be spent to directly support Pell eligible students, what is the process for deciding how the discretionary portion of the funds will be used, and how are the CAU Student Emergency Fund dollars being distributed?
So that's basically a three-part question. Let me deal with the first part, which is the emergency aid component, and I'll pitch the discretionary fund component to the Chief Operating Officer. So I was privileged to have the opportunity to work with the Department of Education, Secretary DeVos, which I sit on a congressionally appointed committee to advise the Secretary on other matters anyway, as well as UNCF, Thurgood Marshall, and others to negotiate and to put together components of the CARES Act. Of course, the CARES Act is the $2 trillion economic emergency relief package that was passed by Congress on March the 18th. Part of that $2 trillion is a carve out for higher education of $14 billion. Of that $14 billion is further disaggregated into funds that are specific to HBCUs and MSIs. Further disaggregation has components that set aside money for emergency relief to go directly to the students. So we received at Clark Atlanta University about a little over $6 million is what we will receive. We've advanced our own money to this point to support our students again, and we were able to do that because we're fiscally strong. But we do know that the federal government will be sending $6 million to us. Of that, $3 million must go directly to students. So the allocation of the $3 million from the federal government came from a formula that they used, which was predicated upon students at each campus who were eligible to receive Pell grants. That's how the $3 million was determined. So what the expectation is that when we receive the $3 million from the federal government, that we would distribute it to those students who have the most need as identified as students who are Pell Grant eligible. So essentially, you've heard a lot on the national news about some of the institutions, the larger institutions like Harvard, who received the money, and Harvard agreed to send it back because they felt like they didn't necessarily need it. So what we're doing in our instance is we're making sure we get that money to the students who have the greatest need, not all of the students at Clark Atlanta, but those based on the financial aid formula who are Pell Grant eligible will receive funding from this $3 million. Dr. Torres is going to chime in later again about the on-campus emergency aid fund. He's done a great job with that, and I'm looking forward to his contribution. But now let me pitch it to my COO, Mr. Phillips. Let me say parenthetically, Jolene, that while he's new, like you said about me, I'm new to the presidency of Clark Atlanta University, but not new to the presidency. We have a COO in place that has over 3 decades of higher education experience, Mr. Eli Phillips.
Let's give him a second.
He's probably taking it off mute, but he had some financial challenge, some technical challenges with his computer earlier.
Well, while we're waiting on Mr. Phillips, how about we move it forward and have Mr. Burston to give his response and bring up the slide to talk about the SEF, the Student Emergency Fund, and then we can go back to Mr. Phillips.
Jolene, can you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Very good. Magic. Okay. Hey, thank you, Dr. French. Let me just share that of the $6 million allocated from the CARES Act that Dr. French just noted, $3 million is considered to be discretionary or the institution portion. The university will use this $3 million to reimburse itself for cash refunds dispersed to students really last week for room, board, and fees, which totaled about $4 million. Mr. Burston has been very instrumental in fundraising for the CAU Student Emergency Fund. So I will ask Mr. Burston now to give an update on where that stands.
And thank you so much, Mr. Phillips, for your support and for the team in this effort. I wish we were in the multi-purpose room so I could look at everybody in the eye. You know, I like to jump up and down and I get excited about fundraising because the first three letter in the word fundraising is F-U-N. The D stands for dollars. So put it together, we are fundraising. And as you know, CAU family, the abrupt change from an on-ground learning environment to a remote learning environment presented a huge challenge for our students and our faculty and staff as well. But through the generosity of donors, including many on the phone, we were able to support our students. And I want to thank the entire faculty and staff for what you've done from fundraising, because actually you are ahead of where we were last year in terms of the fundraising efforts. So I thank you. But in terms of the support to date, and of course the numbers have increased, we have raised over $104,000, representing 430 donors. I get excited about that. And then that supported 233 students. Now, the question is how were the funds being used? Now, to date, we've spent just slightly over $86,000, but as Dean Torres will tell you, we have over 125 requests in queue. With those funds, we were able to provide 161 laptops so that the students can get their work done. We provided airline tickets, gift card for gas, emergency lodging, rent and storage because they had to move so quickly, many of them, food insecurities, medical bills, and toiletries. And again, I want to thank you from the top and bottom of my heart and on behalf of the entire team for what you've done for this initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Burston, for that answer. This next question will be directed to Ms. Deborah Hoyt, our Chief People Officer, and also to Dr. Kurt Young, as well as Ron Brown, our Staff Assembly Chair. So here's a question. The pressure to keep up with work and manage my personal life with all of the uncertainty about what is next and when we will get back to normal is making me feel anxious and worried. Where can I go for help? Mrs. Hoyt.
To do the unmute. Thank you very much for your patience there while I took the mic off mute. Unmute.
No problem.
We are very mindful that this is an extremely difficult time and unprecedented times for not only us, but for the entire nation, and that it can be very stressful. This is not like a time that any of us have faced in our lifetimes. I would encourage you to take full advantage of the benefits that the university offer at no cost to our employees. You have access for counseling through Employee Connect. You have access through medical advice through our online service, Teledoc. I sent out information on April 7th to all of you about both of those services. If you did not receive those, I invite you to call me directly or call any member of the HR team. You can reach us the same as you did when we were on ground. All of our office phone numbers work. They have been transferred to our mobile numbers. All of our emails are the same. I can assure you that our team is available to you the same as if we were on the campus. So please do call us if we can do anything to assist you during this time.
Jolene, this is such an important question, and Ms. Hoyt, the response was critical. We're in a moment right now where one of the biggest stress factors that can contribute to any person is just the fear of the unknown, right? On the one hand, we don't really know what we're dealing with in terms of this particular virus. On the one hand, on the other hand, we're being told that the state is going to be reopened, but we must maintain social distancing, and what does that mean? We're trying to figure out how we'll deal with the testing and vaccinations on the one hand, and discussions about disinfectants on the other hand. And so you add to that just the fundamental stresses of being displaced, right? So we have our faculty members who are part of a university, and the university is of course a place of learning, but it's also at its very basic level, it's a space for human interaction, contact, human contact. And not just contact with strangers, contacts with our colleagues, contact with individuals who mean a tremendous amount to us. And so part of what's happening with some of our colleagues is just the serious stress of isolation. You hear the term cabin fever from time to time, but it's really a serious factor that is impacting our colleagues in a serious way. And it's important to hear you articulate that those services are available, and the way that we can access them. We are academics, as scholars and teachers. We are academics, and as such, we are used to being able to conduct our research. One of our favorite spaces is our lab, right? We love being in the library. We love engaging in the classroom and all that comes with that. And then you have just some basic stresses that are associated with the academic environment, such as going through tenure. And we have colleagues who are both coming up for tenure and colleagues who are in the middle of the process now, and all of that causes. And so we know that we struggle with, as a society, challenges around mental health and challenges around emotional stability. And it's just really important to hear you articulate those services and the availability thereof to our colleagues.
Jolene?
Yes.
The saddest things we suffer in our human experience is being alone.
Right.
Particularly during times such as these. I encourage each of us to create community, be a lifeline to those that you know are alone. Start a video chat, make a phone call, send a letter via email or postal mail. Let's all be there for one another. Your presence and encouragement can go a long way. You can also connect with other faculty and staff on Wednesdays between 12:15 and 1:15 via Zoom for the Experiencing God Bible study, as well as some laughter and conversation. There are several facilitators, and I'm one of them. The login info is posted, and you can email or text our chaplain, Reverend Dr. Miles, via email or phone. Remember, your presence and words of encouragement can go a long way.
Thank you. Thank you all for answering that question. Our next question goes to our Provost and Chief Academic Officer, Provost Bowles. It reads, faculty are concerned about our contracts. When will our faculty contracts for 2020 and 2021 be issued?
Thank you for that question. Let me begin by stating that I understand that this is a difficult time for each of us, and we're all working hard to make the adjustment from being on campus to working from home. The demands are incredible. President French will issue faculty contracts no later than June 15th. Faculty must return contracts to the Office of Provost by July 1st. Faculty who are not able to return contracts by July 1st because of extenuating circumstances should contact the Office of Provost by phone or email to request an extension. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Our next question will be directed to our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Eli Phillips, and President French. It reads, has the administration determined a date for staff employees to return to campus? And if not, is there a timeline for making that decision, since we're hearing so much conflicting information about the virus and its projections?
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for the question, Jolene. Let me ask, can you hear me?
I can, sir.
Okay, very good. The first responsibility given to me at the university was to chair the coronavirus task force. The individuals on the task force include campus leaders from across the university. They have been an awesome group to work with. Because there is still uncertainty about when to reopen all businesses, out of abundance of caution, we have decided to extend teleworking through May the 31st. Please keep in mind that this timeline may be shortened or extended as more information comes out about the status of the virus in the city and the state. If a decision is made to change the May 31st date, we will give everyone an advance notice. We want everyone to continue to be safe and follow all CDC guidelines, such as frequent washing of your hands and practicing social distancing. Dr. French, would you like to share any additional information about coordinated efforts among the AUC institutions?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. And indeed, it's been a challenge in trying to determine when it will be safe for our colleagues to return to campus. And that's one of the things that makes it interesting and particularly challenging for Provost Bowles and I, because when we make these decisions, we're talking about family, we're talking about people whom we love, and we don't want to be overly anxious to return to campus until we know that it's safe for our Panther Nation, until we know that it's safe for them to return. Now, Clark Atlanta University is a unique place because you have faculty and staff who are begging to get back to campus, and we are saying, wait until we know that it's safe. They want to return to work. They desire. You have researchers, Dr. Young said it, you have researchers who love their research, who love the laboratories, whether they be social scientists in the library or the hard scientists in Cole Center. They're anxious to return to campus, and we get it. So we meet with on a regular basis with the Council of Presidents. I meet with the presidents. Provost Bowles meets with the provosts, and we're trying to determine, given that we share some classes, we have cross registrations, and we have so many agreements in place, that we want to make a decision not just of consensus, but of unanimity, as when all of the AUC schools will reopen and it would be safe to return to campus. So that decision is forthcoming. It will be a unified decision of the family of the AUC Center. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Thank you, Jolene.
All right. The next question is for our Chief People Officer, Deborah Hoyt. Mrs. Hoyt, it reads, once that decision is made, will employees be allowed to continue teleworking in cases where they may be in an at-risk category, or if they have school-age children at home who are not able to go to school and or summer camps? That's a really good question.
Thank you, Jolene. It is a really good question. While we have targeted June 1 as the date that we're planning to return to campus, we understand that that is no small undertaking given the situations that we are facing. We will start to develop a detailed action plan around what that return is going to look like. And we've given some consideration, a great deal of consideration of how we phase that in and how do we look after employee safety and how do we look after other things like consideration that you may not have childcare available to you as you would have if we were not in the midst of this virus. Based on what we know today, we will be able to have you apply for temporary teleworking extensions under the policy that we currently have in place. And we will make decisions on a case-by-case basis. We're thinking now that those decisions will be made in combination with your local management and the Office of Human Resources to make sure that we are doing that equitably and with consideration for each person's circumstance. We're also considering something else that I think can be beneficial to those of you who do not have the support systems to return to work on June 1, and that is to put in a flexible scheduling so that we can alternate the hours that you are at work, and that will be helpful. As I said, we're in the process of developing detailed plans on what that will look like, and we will have those plans finalized within the next 2 weeks. I'll be working very closely with Eli and the task force in doing this, and we will push that information out to you in adequate time, well before June 1, so then you can plan your lives accordingly.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoyt. The next question is for our Associate Vice President for Facilities and Project Management. That's Mr. Shelton Anderson. It reads, looking ahead, when do we come back to campus? What are the plans to ensure that our offices and classrooms are clean and safe? Let me read that again. Looking ahead to when we do come back to campus, what are the plans to ensure that our offices and classrooms are clean and safe? And what is the plan for mitigating the risk of exposure to sick or asymptomatic faculty, staff, and students?
Thanks, Jolene. And good evening again, faculty and staff. And that is a long question and a very important one. And certainly there is actually a plan in place that addresses the current employees that are accessing campus. And under this plan, the buildings, the offices, the environments that are being occupied are being cleaned and disinfecting in accordance to the guidance provided by the CDC and the World Health Organization. So we will take a modified version of this plan and begin developing to support the larger body of faculty and staff returning to campus, of course, once the university believes that it is safe and manageable to do so. We are also considering several different approaches, as we may need to implement more of a phased approach towards returning to campus, similar to what Ms. Hoyt just indicated. We will also be working with our public safety leadership team. We envision enhancing precautions necessary to ensure the overall health and safety. And a lot of these precautions will include adding additional sanitizer stations throughout campus, controlling access points around campus, and limiting the number of users per building and in gathering areas, as well as adhering to the 6 feet rule, as well as wearing personal protective equipment, such as face coverings. There may also be some physical modifications to seating and work areas and work schedules, again, as Ms. Hoyt just indicated, which will of course impact us across the campus in an effort to ensure that the practice of social distancing is occurring.
Sheldon, that is awesome. I think you shared with me earlier, though, that you had a video as well. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Being blessed to be one of the team members of the Essentials team members, I've been seeing the sanitizing teams in action in view of our camera system that we have in our state-of-the-art security operations center.
Did you say say that again?
Our state-of-the-art security operations center.
Thank you.
Facilities has been on the case, cleaning, wiping, ensuring our safety. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson, we're going to send this question to you as well. Our faculty researchers are in the midst of doing work that is dependent upon us being able to access our labs. What is being done to help us return to our labs is the question.
Yeah, so that's also a good question. And I know Dr. Young had mentioned that earlier. And I know a lot of us are eager, of course. And we actually did have an opportunity to meet with the research department chairs earlier this year. And we basically reviewed the renovation work that will be taking place across Thomas Cole and the biology buildings this year. Part of what we discussed was the need to renovate a number of labs in more of a phased approach, which would essentially allow our researchers to continue operating across a designated number of labs. So we envisioned following the same methodology and we'll be leveraging more of a comprehensive approach towards scheduling to ensure that social distancing, cleaning, disinfecting our lab environments are the top priority in addition to the renovation work that will take place this year.
Okay. Our next question goes to our Chief Academic Officer, Provost Bowles, as well as Mr. I'm sorry, let's get the titles correct. Dr. Kurt Young. So Dr. Young and Provost Bowles, the question reads, our faculty and staff colleagues have questions about the next academic year. Will decisions about the timeline for students to return to campus be made as a consensus for the AUC as a whole? When we do begin the fall semester, are we considering online or remote teaching for the fall?
Let me begin by just saying that the Atlanta University Center presidents and provosts are committed to considering what is in the best interest of all of the institutions. And we're listening to CDC, the scientists, and medical professionals for information regarding the virus. As you know, CAU summer school will be fully online, and all summer faculty who have not been T-TEC trained are currently working on completing the T-TEC certification requirements. We are proud that to date, 45% of our full-time and adjunct faculty members are T-TEC certified. We fully expect to be on ground this fall with our opening workshop scheduled for August 17th and 18th, with classes starting on Wednesday, August 19th. As a contingency plan, however, all faculty who are to teach this fall, including adjuncts, will need to be T-TEC certified so that CAU can be prepared for online teaching in the event that any part of fall 2020 needs to be removed online. Dr. Hooper and the CEDAL staff will offer T-TEC courses during May, June, and July. And this will ensure that each faculty member has the opportunity to complete the certification requirements.
Yes, thank you for that, Dr. Bowles. We mentioned earlier that one of the challenges of the unknown, and certainly one of the major ones, is what's going to happen in the fall. And I can report on behalf of the Assembly that this is a conversation we've been grappling with, we've been talking about and reflecting on. We mentioned earlier in the conversation, for example, our ability to transition to a remote mode, which includes some of those techniques of course delivery and course dialogue in a quote remote unquote stream. And then we have the colleagues who have been able to transition smoothly into the online environment without any question. And that's also been recognized. And so as we move into the fall, it unlocks even more questions and concerns on behalf of the colleagues, and it's good for us to prepare for that conversation very early. Oh, and also you made mention of the process around contracts. There's also some discussion about the substance, the content of what will this all mean for how our contracts or how the faculty's contracts would look going forward. And the last thing I would say in terms of responding to those uncertainties, this becomes a moment where our pedagogical positions become exposed, right? We begin to think about how do we believe our courses should be delivered? How do we understand the learning environment and the science of teaching and learning and what have you? So what I'm happy to say and happy to see here is a commitment. I heard Dr. French very loud and clear, and you as well, Provost Bowles, a commitment to having dialogue with the faculty, ongoing dialogue, willing to have that conversation or conversations now, as opposed to when the fall rolls around. By that time, positions have hardened and feelings have hardened and what have you. So we look forward to the opportunity to talk more and to communicate in the dialogue and work together towards the best interest of Clark Atlanta University.
We look forward to those discussions.
All right, our next question goes to Mrs. Hoyt and President French. Is the administration considering any impact to salaries or benefits? Have there been conversations around temporary layoffs or furloughs due to COVID-19? And here's the second part of that question. Will we continue to have regular town hall meetings with the president and other campus leaders so we can stay informed and ask questions?
These things have not been a topic of our conversations in the many, many long, intense discussions we have had over the past several days. When I say long and intense conversations, when you get a text message from your president at 2 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and you answer him at 6:30 in the morning, you answer the question that he asked you. And I said to him, and we're wondering if our president sleeps. In 2 minutes, I get a text message back. This is in April, early April, just as we began teleworking. I hope Dr. French, you don't mind my telling the story.
Absolutely
He
not.
texted me back 2 minutes later and told me that he will sleep in May. This was in April, early April, just as we began teleworking. So we have had a tremendous number of meetings, long discussions, intense conversations about the right thing to do for the university and our people. Eli might not be speaking to me after I make this confession, but I actually volunteered him to chair the COVID-19 task force. And for the first several weeks, we were meeting every single day.
Yeah.
So we have given a good deal of thought to the questions that you're asking here. What I can tell you honestly is that the entire intellectual energy of the university is not focused on downsizing the university. We are focused on how we can sustain and maintain the great legacy of this institution. And we think that our focus right now should be on how do we continue to build on what we've already started in the spring, so that come the summer, come the fall, if we have to, that we can deliver on an exceptional virtual classroom experience. And we realize that we have to also have excellent administrative processes that are at the top end of the value chain. So that too will be a focus. That's the conversation that we're having in the near term, not shrinking the university.
That's absolutely the case, Ms. Hoyt. Thank you for sharing. And yes, I will sleep in May. I didn't know you were going to share that, but I will sleep in May. And that just goes to the vigilance of our team, this team and the team of faculty and staff that are observing the call and participating via Zoom. I took great pleasure, as a matter of fact, in having delivered to the governor of the state of Alabama masks that were created with 3D printing by Dr. O and his students in our lab, meeting the needs of our community. The many things that the Philharmonic has done to spread goodwill within our community, the efforts of Shelton Anderson, me calling him at 2 o'clock in the morning, asking him, are those bells going to be ringing at Harkness Hall? Indicating that we have a love for our community and we want to share joy throughout our community. So the second half of that question had to do with whether or not we were going to continue to communicate. And for all of these academicians on the line, you know that when we look at the etymology of the word, it comes from Old Middle Latin communicare, which is to share. And it is our desire as an administration to continue to share in conversation. We've had town hall meetings preparing for this one with Kurt Young, Dr. Young, where we were sharing. A couple of times I felt like he was sharing a little bit too much because he's a football player. And he's like, these are the demands of the faculty. I'm saying, Dr. Young, we hear the demands of the faculty and we are going to continue to share and communicate with you. So we look forward to doing this more in the future.
Hey, our next question. We'll send this one to Dean of Student Services and Campus Life. That, of course, is Dr. Omar Torres. The question reads, students have said they were told there are multiple dates under consideration for graduation. Can you share these dates and how the final decision will be made? Dean Torres.
So that's been a critical conversation for us. And, you know, again, if you understand President French and you understand our Provost Bowles, they are resoundingly clear. We are the university in Atlanta University Center. We are not going to honor and not celebrate our class of 2020 the right way. So what we have been doing is some deliberative dialogue with our student leadership. We've been fortunate enough to have two resounding student leaders in our Student Government Association, both Mr. Levon Campbell Jr. and Mr. Frank Ortega. And we've also been fortunate enough to have the leadership of the class of 2020 Senior Class Council, Ms. Hannah Allen. And they were involved with a group of leaders led by Provost Bowles in really reviewing the deliberative dialogue about planning out for commencement. And the student leaders themselves came to the table with recommendations with regards to when commencement should be considered for rescheduling in both the fall and potentially the spring of 2021. They came to the table and proposed 3 dates in the fall of 2020. The first date was September 25th, 2020. And this was to be a bookend experience to be paired up with our new student convocation program. And it will allow the new students being welcomed to the university to see the outgoing class of 2020 and to be able to put that experience together. The other date that was recommended was October 9th, 2020. And as we all know, that is a critical date as part of our annual homecoming tradition. And it would be a phenomenal opportunity to celebrate our annual tradition of homecoming in the AUC at Clark Atlanta University, and also bring to a apex the celebration of our class of 2020. The other date for consideration was December 21st. And again, the student leadership brought to the table the opportunity to really close out the 2020 calendar year with the opportunity to really send them off the right way going into the holidays. And the final recommendation the 2 final recommendations actually they brought forward to the table was 1, potentially pairing up and celebrating the class of 2021 with the class of 2020 and celebrating both groups together on May 17th, 2021, and having that opportunity to do a grand celebration at Clark Atlanta. And the other recommendation, which again is a shared recommendation, but it is a recommendation that comes in tune with President French keeping in mind that this would not be the only celebration. As a matter of fact, this would be a plus celebration. That would be a virtual opportunity, a virtual celebration of our class of 2020 to be able to celebrate them in the space and what we're doing virtually with all our students, and to celebrate them, but knowing that there's going to be an on-the-ground celebration for them as well.
Before you conclude, Dr. Torres, and thank you again for your great work with the students. I love your passion for this. And we engage the students to get these final options of dates. Where do we go from here? How do we decide which of these dates we will go with?
Thank you, President French. What we're doing right now, as of this evening, we're actually surveying the graduating class with these particular options in mind and reminding them that this came from their student leadership, providing these options to start to gear and generate their feedback on this, to really hear them out, to go back to them and to allow them to really provide their feedback on these respective dates, and to also provide an opportunity to provide their feedback on a virtual celebration as well, knowing that that also comes with the reminder that, again, a virtual celebration is on top of an on-the-ground physical celebration that we know we will do up right here at Clark Atlanta University.
All right, Dean Torres, thank you so very much for that answer. I know everybody's excited to hear those options, and we'll wait to see what the students decide from the survey. So ladies and gentlemen, we've approached the end of our town hall discussion. I'd like to thank all of our panelists. You guys were outstanding. And of course, Dr. French, thank you so much, sir. And at this time, we'd like for you to give your closing remarks.
Well, thank you, Jolene, and thank you again to the panelists and the several hundred faculty and staff that have joined us virtually via Zoom. This has been an exciting conversation, and I tell you, I was excited all the way right there to the end, even when Dean Torres spoke about the commencement celebration, that we will have an on-ground and they're considering a virtue. And I was speaking to Dean Torres earlier and Dr. Young, and they were talking about the significance of making sure to include that in this dialogue, because these students didn't make it on their own for these 4 or 5 years. It took the support of these faculty members who gave them time, the blood, sweat, and tears for them to get to this place. So Clark Atlanta University, being one of the top preeminent universities in the nation, we recognize, yes, this is a student celebration, but it's also a celebration of faculty. So we want to make sure to get these dates there so that faculty can be there and they can support and applaud those students who have done a fantastic job over the years. So thank you for the opportunity of this town hall. Again, as I heard Dean Torres say, it would be my preference to have this conversation on the promenade. I'm reminded of a faculty member who was trying to get to me, and she was a long-standing faculty member and is one who's been at the university for over 3 decades. And she said, Mr. President, I've been trying to get to you. I really want to speak to you as soon as your time permits. I said, I'll make it happen. She went back to her office in the B school. And 7 minutes later, she was shocked when she turned around and her secretary was telling her, the president is here to see you. Why? Because I wanted to hear her concerns. And I was able to hear her concerns in person. This evening, I'm not able to hear them in person, but we've heard them virtually. And for that, we give thanks. Every generation has its challenges, to be sure. Whether you were part of those enslaved, dealing with the tragedies of being chattel property, or whether you were part of those of the antebellum period, or whether you were part of the Jim Crow generation that had to overcome, or whether you were part of the 1920s depression and the civil rights struggles to follow, every generation has its challenges. This generation's challenge is COVID-19. I'm proud, and I thank God for the opportunity of leadership to share with leaders such as these panelists, to share with faculty and staff members who are joining us virtually to deal with the challenge which is set before us. Make no mistake about it, it is a formidable challenge, but also know that we are Clark Atlanta University, and we will come through this together. Thank you so much, Jolene.
Thank you so much, Dr. French. Thank you. I'd like to let our viewers know that we will be sending out frequently asked questions and answers, so they will have any additional questions answered, so to look forward to getting those. Additionally, remind them that we will host another town hall for CAU alumni via Zoom on Thursday, April 30th, 2020, of course, at 6 p.m. Mr. Burston, take it away, sir.
Thank you, Jolene Butts Freeman, and thank all of the faculty and staff for joining us tonight. Again, we missed you so bad. We miss you. And but what we'd like to do, as Mr. Phillips says, please remember to follow CDC COVID-19 guidelines. And what does that mean?
Absolutely.
Adhere to social separation. That means a minimum of 6 feet apart. Wash your hands frequently for 20 seconds. Cough in your elbow and wear a mask or facial coverings when you go outside. I want to thank our president for his leadership. Mrs. Hoyt, I received 2 a.m. texts as well, so you are not alone. And I want to thank our moderator, Jolene Butts Freeman, the first female drum major for the university. Thank you, panelists, for your insight, your inspiration, and your participation. And as I like to say, my favorite line, as we face the rising sun together, please remember to be vigilant, be safe, and have a fantastic rest of your week. But before we close the town hall tonight, I would like to ask Reverend Dr. Tanya Miles to send us forth.
Sam, thank you. And I want to do that. And before we close, we've given acknowledgments to so many who made this happen. And when I look at this picture on the wall in my living room, I see the beautiful picture, but behind the wall, the only way that it could stand and remain on the wall is there's a nail that you don't see. Yeah. And I want to thank the nail that we don't see that has worked with us, faculty member, Dr. Mary Hooper. I want to thank her for pulling us together and for working so diligently with us in this process. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Hooper. Thank you, Dr. French.
Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. Before we started this evening, the Philharmonic Choir reminded us that faith and fear cannot, will not, and shall not coexist. Fear means that our hearts are focused only on what we can see. But faith means that our eyes are focused on God. As we prepare to move forward, I hope that you see that all is well. We are in good hands, God's hands and the hands of a very capable president in George T. French. At this time, as we prepare to go forward, I invite you, each one of you, to join me in a word of prayer. Won't you pray with me? Gracious and loving God, we thank you for your word that promises that you would be with us always. You are ever-present help in times of trouble. For the journey ahead, servant leaders, selflessness, sleepless nights, and the sharing in community, the nails behind the picture that we do not see, we give you thanks. We ask that you would keep us, comfort us, heal us, remind us of your faithfulness, and shower us with your love. May your grace and your mercy rest upon us. May your promises undergird us. May your almighty power prop us up, cover us, and keep us. These things we ask, both spoken and unspoken, and hope for in your holy, righteous, and matchless name. For you and for all things, we give you thanks. We ask that you would continue to watch over us, that all that we think and all that we do would glorify you. Amen and amen.
Amen.